Welcome to The Pulse, brought to you by United Regional Healthcare System. I'm Henry Florsham. I'm the president and CEO of the Wichita Falls Chamber of Commerce. We are streaming live on Facebook and YouTube, and will be rebroadcast on KJTL Texoma's Fox 18 on Sunday. My guest today is State Senator Pat Fallon. Pat, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, Henry, how are you?
Yeah, good. Glad to have you here. So let's start off with a real simple question. Give us your elevator pitch. Who is Pat Fallon?
I think you're a humble servant, Henry. Grew up in a small town, and my parents are retired school teachers. Well, I came down to Texas to serve in the Air Force, was stationed at Shepherd Air Force Base. And then after that, after I served in the Air Force, started a business that was fortunate enough and blessed. It went rather well. And then got married to my better half, Susan. We've been married 16 years, have two boys. They're 13 and 11, Thomas and Mac. And then got involved with, I was always a volunteer for politics and for other campaigns and causes, but ended up running in 2009 for city council, served for 3 years, and then 6 years in the state house, and now 2 years in the state senate. And just proud to be an American.
There you go. So what's the last 2.5 months been like for you?
Just like everybody else, bizarre, surreal, not seeming as if this is like a bad sci-fi movie.
Yeah.
A lot of this kind of stuff, a lot of Zoom and teleconferencing. And really, so I'll tell you, the thing that a lot of people don't realize is what we thought we knew back in March. The president was on a call with Governor Abbott and Lieutenant Governor Patrick on, I think it was March 15th. And then they got off that call with President Trump and immediately called the 19 Republican senators. And we had a discussion, and this is how it began. This is going to be like World War II. This is going to be the greatest struggle the country's ever faced. We're going to lose 3 million people by the summer, 100,000 Texans by late April. Our hospitals will be overwhelmed. We only have 170,000 ventilators in the country. We're going to have to choose between who lives and who dies. And we were just horrified, and the economy is going to collapse. And society as we know it may unravel. That was the phone call. I have never felt more nauseous in my life. It was unreal. We were all shocked. And now, fortunately, knowing what we know now, the reality was not even 1% of what they had predicted. Thank the Lord. But that was the call we had. And you can't share that at that time publicly per se, because you don't want to cause a panic. But that's how it began. And thank goodness we are where we are now. So it's been quite a challenge.
Sure. And it's amazing to think, I saw it more locally because I interact with our mayor and council and city and county staff a lot. But you pride yourself on being a normal guy like everybody else, right? And then all of a sudden you're thrust into this position. Our mayor's thrust into this position of making decisions about what happens with people's livelihoods, right? And what you can and cannot do. And I know the mayor's like, man, I just wanted to help us figure out how to spend the road money better,
Sure.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. So,
and then you get this, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought.
No, just with what Stephen had, the choices he had to make, the choices that Woody Gossam had to make, the choices that all of the county judges and mayors and what Governor Abbott had to make, particularly back in March, was a buffet of horrible choices.
Yeah.
Because we had to err on the side of public safety, and we were very cautious. Now, knowing what we know now, I'm a full proponent of moving forward, opening Texas, being careful, being cautious, being smart, being considerate, but not being afraid. We have to live our lives. And I would analogize it, you live in a military community, and I was stationed up there. It's like a foxhole. There's a time and a place to jump in the foxhole, but you got to get out of it, because if you don't, you're going to get, you're going to lose your life, because artillery shells are eventually going to hit you.
That's a great analogy.
We're in the foxhole. Now it's time to get out. And we have to move forward, because otherwise we're not going to have a country to save. And we know it. And the other thing to be cautious about with this, some of the media want to say, oh, we have these experts, these COVID-19 experts. There is no such thing as a COVID-19 expert. There's such thing as infectious disease experts. But we know so little about COVID-19 that there will be an expert on COVID-19 2, 3, 5 years from now. We're still all learning. I mean, they just came out recently and said that if you're asymptomatic, you really don't spread it. That's exactly the opposite of what we heard just a scant month ago.
Right.
So everything's evolving. The sands are shifting, and we need to be smart, you don't necessarily have to shake someone's hand, and if you do, just make sure you have you have hand sanitizer, and we practice good hygiene. But we're going to act a little bit differently, and we're going to defeat this thing. We're going to move forward.
Yeah, exactly. So you represent Wichita Falls, but you've got a pretty big district, right?
Yes, sir.
We know how it works, and we saw you a lot during the campaign and early on in your tenure, and can't wait for you to come back and visit. But what are you seeing in your district today in regards to COVID-19?
Well, in our district, it's 14 counties, 105 cities, 111 school districts, 45 chambers of commerce, and so it's expansive. It's about 3 hours east-west and almost 3 hours north-south, depending on where you go. And what we're seeing, particularly, it's a rural district. 85% of our Senate district's rural. And so Texas, first off, isn't really been all that hard hit vis-a-vis other states. When you look at relative to where we're about 40th or 41st lightest hit of all the states per capita. And so we're fortunate in that regard. And then when you look in rural Texas, it's even lighter hit. So as of a few weeks ago, Archer County, one of our 14 counties, hadn't even had a recorded case. I haven't seen in the last week or two if that has changed. So what we need to be cognizant of, and something certainly that I've been telling the governor and lieutenant governor, is that we need to have different standards and understand that the rural part of Texas should be given a little more latitude, or a lot more latitude and freedom. Quite frankly, I think this should be at 100% right now. And I think that's just around the corner. So people were really concerned and afraid about this virus, but also about, like you said, their livelihoods. And now we know that this isn't quite what we thought it was going to be. In fact, nowhere near. People are still concerned about their livelihoods, and they should be. I mean, I own a business, and we have not had any dividend checks in the last 3 months, and we just wanted to make sure we could keep everybody employed, which we were able to. And so now I think people are a little bit itchy and anxious to move forward. We also always need to be cognizant to be smart, but it is time to move on.
I agree. And going back to your foxhole analogy, it's hard to fault any of our elected officials and decision makers for what happened early on, but now you've got this medley of rules. Our job got difficult because it was hard to update and decipher these codes when you had city codes, county rules, and then the state and feds talking to you as well. And so now that we're out of that, right, the city and county backed off of theirs, and it's basically the state orders. Now that we're off of that, you still got restaurants that are struggling, trying to figure out what it means for them, or bars or other businesses. And the worst thing is, even when they open back up, how do we get their customers to come back? Because we've got restaurants for the most part that can open up at 75% occupancy, but until their customers come back, it ain't happening. And so you got a lot of them struggling. And the big challenge is this, and you know this because you're a business owner. Most entrepreneurs out there, you can figure out how to limp along for a month or maybe two, whether it's savings or just severely cutting costs or going into your credit card or something. But after that, there's a lot of small businesses that are really going to be suffering, and we may start to see some closures. And so that's what we're trying to avoid. How do you just help companies survive this until we're able to come back, till your customer base comes back? Talk to me about the average day as a state senator. What does that look like? Is there such a thing?
No. Well, it is an honor. I mean, you say that on the campaign trail, you say that when you're in front of groups, but it really is, because we have almost 1 million Texans in the Senate district. And during the campaign, I got to meet so many of the folks, and now it's the pace is a little bit slower. But with COVID, it was a challenge because, well, let's say, for instance, right now I was on 5 committees during the session. And I'm still on all 5 of those committees, but the lieutenant governor has also appointed me to the Sunset Committee and redistricting. So now I'm on 7 committees, which is the most of any legislator. Most House members are on 2, and most senators are on 3 or 4. So I was on 5 because I wasn't a chair. I wasn't a committee chair because I was new. So 5 was a challenge, but having 7, but we don't meet right now. We're not allowed to meet virtual. We have to figure out how because they're public meetings. So we're figuring all that out. And then I was put on 3 different task force, just not official committees, but just to research things and for the lieutenant governor to how to open up Texas and what the legislature is going to look like when we do start committee hearings again. And I've been a proponent of opening committee hearings and starting them immediately. It would have been a little bit of a challenge with the protests we had last week, and they were, I don't know if you saw some of the photos, it was pretty awful. Spray painting the Capitol, tearing things out, just complete vandalism and violence to no purpose. But the day in the life would be you get up and the first thing is I'm answering emails and texts and phone calls and private messages on Facebook and try to keep up. My staff gets on me because I give out my cell phone number. And so it's hard, when you have a represent a million people to be just that one person. And sometimes a few things slip through the cracks. And so that's when I tell folks, if you definitely want a response, 100% chance, please go through the office. But also, I try to be really good about getting back to everybody. But so you do that, and then I go into my office and look over anything that I have to do from the state. And usually it's some kind of research, because I don't like to really expound on any topic unless I do my research. And so that takes time to be able to know what you're talking about in a given subject matter, because I'm the jack of all trades, master of none would be the best description for a legislator.
Well, you're not like most people on Facebook. They want to mouth off about everything.
Well, I'm mouth off. I just want to know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. We've both got friends that were, they were constitutional law experts, and now they're epidemiology experts. And next week it's going to be something else, right?
Right. But you just, if I read it on the internet, doesn't mean it's necessarily true. I'd like to more than single source things. But also it's really important, regardless of where you are in the political prism, is to start with doubts so you can end in certainties. I read a quote a long time ago: if you begin with certainties, you'll end in doubts, and vice versa.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Really, Henry, it really is. And when people say certain things that they get passionate or riled up about, and they sometimes they sound like outrageous statements. Well, I want to do the research to see if they were indeed an outrageous statement or not. And I'll let the facts guide my opinions, not my opinions guide the facts. And I wish more people would do that, particularly in the media. And I understand the way it works. If people are enraged, if they're scared, they'll watch more. So their viewers, the ratings go up and they make more money. Or if it's in print media, if people are scared or they're enraged, they'll buy more papers. So then their profits go up. I get that. But they need to be fair, and they need to be really, I think, isn't it a journalist's job to gather facts and report them in context? And there are some reporters that still do that, and it's refreshing when you deal with them and that are fair. But unfortunately, it's not always the case. I think you saw that with the COVID. You have a health issue that becomes politicized and then creates an economic crisis. And, we just have to be wary of that and always be suspect of anybody in power, any elected official. And I welcome scrutiny and a healthy degree of skepticism. And don't believe what we say, just believe what we do.
One of the big challenges today is that everything's become so partisan, and people decide their truth and then look for the outlet that's speaking that truth. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how we get past that. So I'm gonna ask you a personal question. And for those of you that have watched this show since the start, we ask all of our guests this very important question, Pat.
Okay.
Have you watched Tiger King?
No, I haven't. No. That's the one thing that if you really truly do this job the right way, my television viewing has collapsed. I love to binge watch some really good Netflix series and things like that. I just haven't had the time in about the last year or two to do that. So I get most of my news on the internet and try to do, and I always, read different sources. I'll immediately go to one source and then another. They talk about the same thing and it's an exact opposite viewpoint. And then I'll try to find neutrals. And it's really hard, as you just said, to find anything that's reporting straight news anymore without some kind of tint or prism or color. And then I'll go to Real Clear Politics. And then there's a degree of different articles. And then from there, anything that's catching my fancy. And I'll talk to our staff. We have staff meetings a lot. Now it's all virtual. And then I still like to get out and knock on the doors. And that has, of course, dried up completely in the last 3-4 months.
Right.
So we'll be getting back to that too.
I don't know how you do it. I've watched Mayor Santayana a lot, and he has a much smaller geographic area to cover than you do, but he owns several businesses as well, and he's everywhere. And I just don't know how you manage your personal life while you're doing this job, and you've got such a big district. That's got to be tough. So I understand the TV thing. For those of you who just joined us, you are watching The Pulse, brought to you by United Regional Healthcare System. My guest today is State Senator Pat Fallon. Senator, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I I always knew I wanted to go in the military, believe it or not. When I was in second or third grade, I just was fascinated with it. My dad had served in the Army, and so I got to check that box, and they were nice enough to pay for college. So it was what I call a synergistic relationship, and I just always wanted to kind of be an entrepreneur and in business. And I thought about public service when I was a kid and what that would look like, and then determined as I got a little bit older that I didn't really want to do that until I had some degree of financial stability so I could have some independence. And you know how the old game is. You don't want to be reliant on the donors. You really want to just be answerable to your constituents. And I was in a position finally to do that in 2009 when I first ran for office. So I really am blessed. And I love every bit of the blessings and the bounties that the good Lord has bestowed upon me. And it's great to work with great people like yourself. I mean, you love Wichita Falls. You love the community. And when you have folks that you get to surround yourself with, like typically when I go anywhere to do a speech, the room is usually filled with volunteers.
Sure.
That believe in their communities, that truly believe that their communities are greater than they are, and that the state is and the country is. So I'm seeing the cream of the crop, and that's why we really need to back our law enforcement, because they see kind of the opposite. Most of the time, a lot of the time, police officers are seeing people at their worst and at their lowest moments, and that's a tough job. And then to demand the impossible from them. I'm all for community policing. I'm all for improving in best practices, but we've got to back our law enforcement, because otherwise, we're going to have chaos. And it's been tough moving forward for them. And who's going to want to be a police officer in the future if they're going to be badmouthing the line like this, and quite unfairly? When you're talking about a sliver, a tiny fraction, are the bad actors.
That's a great point. And yeah, we don't ever call the police and say, hey, listen, my kids are being perfect angels and the neighborhood's really peaceful. Come on by.
You want some pie? Come over and we'll have some apple pie. And I got some ice cream, and it's nice. The pie's warm and everything's great. They don't see us at our best. And even, law-abiding citizens, when we maybe go a little bit too fast in our vehicles, we don't want to see them right at that moment. And then we're going to get a little ticket and what have you. So they have a tough job. We're asking them, we're paying them, and all the first responders for that matter, of course, the military, to go into harm's way to protect us. And we need to really give them grace. And when you see them, thank them, because, and especially now that they're having to go through this, and again, quite unfairly. So I just wanted to mention we're back in the blue. We always have, and we always will. And we're going to do everything we can for our Texas's finest.
We talked a little bit about the fact that you're an entrepreneur. Tell us about your business, because that's something nobody probably outside of where you live really hears about.
Yes, it's a secret little niche. We do pre-printed clothing lines that are patriotic, proactive, and positive. I noticed back about 10, 12 years ago that the leading brand of clothing that was kind of hip and in at the time for men was called Affliction, and they had negative or neutral messaging on their product. And from a technical standpoint, the shirts were really kind of neat, but the messaging was awful. And then the leading brand for women was, no kidding, called Sinful. So you had these teenage girls wearing shirts across their chest the word sinful. I just thought, as a society, we could do better. We have a country of 330 million. So we came up with a brand called Virtus, which means courage. And then for a female line, we called it a Prime, which is a beautiful Latin word that means above all. And just went with, they're hip and cool and kind of neat designs, but they all have positive messaging and patriotic messaging, and went really well. The military is one of our biggest customers. It's not the government, it's just the military members from an online perspective or in the stores. And then, of course, we do custom apparel and add specialty products as well. So it's been really neat. We've been able to grow. When I was in Wichita Falls, I started the business, and it was just me in my house. And then it evolved into a business that has 12 locations and just under 100 employees.
100 employees. That's not a small business.
Well, we're, I guess, medium sized now.
Throw me your website. What's that, so we can tell the viewers?
Well, it's kind of interesting, to be honest. I'll give you the frank and candid, right?
Okay.
So our old website worked just great. And then I said back about 6-8 months ago, I was perhaps looking at maybe running for the United States Senate. And suddenly it got corrupted and stolen. And you don't want to go to that site anymore, because you're going to see things that have nothing to do with it. It's not good. So it's the Great American Apparel Company. and we're redoing the website because of magically somebody. I'm not accusing any particular person, but it got hijacked. So we're working through that.
Do you have a Facebook page?
Yeah, it's Virtus Apparel on Facebook.
Virtus Apparel. Okay, got it. All right, so.
But don't go to that website.
Stay away. Okay, stay away from Pat Fallon's business. That's the word.
No, just
So I've been reading up about you a little bit, and you did something that I thought was really stupid. I'm sure you hear that all the time, right?
My wife said that while I was training for it.
Yeah. Tell us about the 777.
I'd love to come on the show sometime and talk to you solely, literally about that, because we do a speech now, an hour-long speech to visit about that journey. But there was a little boy named Johnny Wade back in 2015 who had been diagnosed with a very rare form of cancer, a melanoblastoma, and unfortunately, the life expectancy it had about a 5% survivability rate after 1 year. And he lived up in Illinois, and we had friends we had mutual friends, and I got to read about his story on Facebook. And my wife had been reading it for months. And when I finally, I didn't read it at first because I had sons his age, and it hit a little bit too close to home. And I figured, how could I help this little boy? I'm not a medical researcher. I'm not a philanthropist, a wealthy philanthropist. I just don't know how to help. Anyhow, long story short, I read his post, and he was so selfless, and he had vision and maturity and just a heart beyond his years. His mother asked him in October of 2015, Henry, after he'd had a score of chemotherapy treatments, radiation treatments, surgeries. She said, Johnny, if you could have one wish, what would it be? And he said, Mommy, I just pray that no other kid ever has to get cancer. When he's thinking of other kids, he didn't say to get better, interestingly enough. I think most of us would have. But I wanted to do something for him, and I didn't know what, and I prayed on it. And I had seen earlier this summer this crazy thing where people attempt to do 7 marathons in 7 days on all 7 continents. They start in Antarctica and they finish in Australia. And they're flying around in commercial flights, and only 11 or 12 people had been able to do it successfully, logistically, and of course the wear and tear on your body, et cetera. And I'd never run anything more than a 5K. So I figured if somebody like me, and at the time I was 30 pounds heavier, that has, at my age, I was 47 at the time, I could get I could raise a lot of awareness and get a lot of attention and raise a lot of funds for pediatric cancer research, and give Johnny and his brother, who is physically healthy, of course, going through emotional strain, give Jackie and Johnny Wade a great distraction and an adventure and to go around the world. So my wife and I sent them a globe and had all the locations where we were going to run, and they started to follow it. But then I had to train. I only had 90 days to train for something like this, and I had never run more than maybe 8 miles in a sitting, and hadn't done that often, and only run 5K races. Well, the body does respond. I had to train every single day for 89 days, and we did. And then I ran the World Marathon Challenge in January of 2016 and did it successfully. It was, I think it was absolutely a God thing. And Johnny Wade, unfortunately, passed away in December, the month before I went. I wasn't even sure if we should continue. But Johnny's mother, Kimberly, had called me, and she said, no, I want you to run, and I want you to help try to fulfill our mission, which is, our son's last wish, which is to make sure no other kid gets cancer. Hey, this is the Attorney General. I think I'm going to say hello. Hey, is this Ken Paxton? Hey, Ken, I'm on the Pulse in Wichita Falls right now. You want to say hello to the people? Hold on. I'm going to put you on speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Ken Paxton, your Attorney General.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
Wichita Falls. This is Henry up at the chamber in Wichita Falls, and Wichita Falls loves Ken Paxton.
Say that again. I couldn't hear you, Henry.
Oh, no. Oh, sorry. That was me, Ken. They said Wichita Falls loves Ken Paxton.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's very nice. I really appreciate that. I need to get back up there. I've been up there a little while.
All right. Well, they want you up there. Hey, after I'm done, I'm going to be done at 4. Can I call you back? All right. Thanks, Ken Paxton. Okay. Cheers. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Yeah, you faced that, didn't you?
No, I asked him to call me this morning, and he waited until 3:24 p.m. But no, Ken's awesome, and he really does love Wichita Falls and Rita Gustafson and all the folks up there. So that was kind of funny. He called.
Yeah.
If the governor calls the lieutenant governor, we'll put him on too.
You say, yeah, I'll answer too. So I've seen a picture of you. I'm a big college football fan too. I've seen a picture of you wearing a gold helmet next to one of the most legendary coaches of all time, Lou Holtz.
Yes.
Tell me about that experience.
I mean, he's a Hall of Fame coach and he's a great man. And just to give you a flavor of who he is and his character, 2 years ago when I was running for the state Senate, and I was a reserve player for him 26, 27 years ago, I had reached out to him and let him know. I said, Coach, I'm running for the state Senate and would love for you to come out if you can. I know, because he's a wonderful public speaker and he's in high demand. He's 81 years old. He flies from Florida at like 4 or 5 in the morning, catches the earliest flight. He flies into Dallas. He does this fundraiser for me. He refuses any payment, and then he flies home. That's who he is. And he did it for me, somebody that was, again, a reserve player for him almost 3 decades ago. He's just a tremendous, and he's amazing. And what he always told us then, we were a bit skeptical because we were 19 years old. We knew everything in the world, and we were big and cocky and strong, and we're going to live forever. And we were football players at Notre Dame. Henry, didn't you know we were a big deal? That was the attitude that we had. And there's 100 of us. And he said, I don't look at me as a coach. Look at me more as a teacher, because that's how I feel I am. And I want to make you good football players, great football players, and I want you to win football games. But I would prefer, if I had to choose, I want to make you great men as well. And one of the things that he kept telling us, and it resonates when I have to take a tough vote politically, is he said, gentlemen, there's never a wrong time to do the right thing. Simple, but it's something that we all need to hear more, because when somebody will say, well, why did you do that? There's never a wrong time to do the right thing. In fact, he gave us an analogy once. It's a true story back then, like 30 years ago or so, where a young man found like $20,000 and he turned it in. And you wouldn't believe how many people asked him, why in the world did you turn it in? And he said, because it wasn't mine. And then people, made him out to be this hero. And he said, you're not a hero when you do the right thing. You just didn't do wrong. And those things resonate over time. And also he taught us work ethic, and he taught us that you can achieve great and high achievement. Doesn't have to be somebody else. It doesn't have to be for the other guy or the other gal. It's something that you can do. You just have to put the work in. And he would always say, and I'll do my little Lou Holtz impression. I pray to God he never sees this, but because he kind of talked a little bit, Henry, like this. He'd say, man, everybody wants to play football when the band's playing, 20 million people watching on television in a beautiful Saturday in October. And how many people want to get up at 6 in the morning and do sprints until they vomit? Not many, but that's how you win football games in October.
That's awesome. I got to tell you, you're the second football coach impersonation that we've had on this show, and the other was just a 2-word line from me. Go Tigers. That's all I got. I can't do Coach O after that. So here's what we're going to do. We're at 28:30 for the viewers on Fox 18. Thank you for watching this TV broadcast of The Pulse, brought to you by United Regional. For our live stream crowd, stick around and we'll be right back. To everybody watching on Fox, you can watch this show in its entirety on the Chamber's Facebook page. So thanks again for Texoma's Fox 18 for airing The Pulse, and for Senator Fallon for joining us. We'll see you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we're back. Let's talk about the Air Force here for a minute. One of the big issues that Shepherd Air Force Base has been experiencing over the last few years, and I know a lot of bases, not just Air Force, are facing the same thing all over the country, and that's talking about encroachment by wind farms.
Yes.
We've had this situation early on in this issue where wind farm developers were allowed to basically go out and start selling leases and line up permits to do wind farms without the Air Force or the military even having a clue that it was going on. And so it's become a very public issue. The Chamber's been involved. The Shepherd Military Affairs Committee and Glenn Barham have been extremely involved, and so has our city and county government. Talk to me about this issue from the state level And if there's anything in the works right now that you're aware of, or anything that we can do to help this issue, because what happens with a base like Shepherd, the reason they located here as much as any other reason is because it's big and flat, and there's in any direction you can fly and you can do training routes. And so when something like a wind farm, you get dozens or hundreds of tall towers, that affects how many low-level training routes that base can have.
Yeah, there's no doubt, because obviously, as you know, it interferes with the radar, and Glenn's done a great job as a committee, and the mayor and James Frank. This is a national security issue. I mean, we have to be able to train our pilots, and we have to train them effectively. And so this is something that we have to find. We always have to err, in my humble opinion, on the national security side. Where there is always an easy way to find balance, but the last place you need to put wind farms is by an Air Force training base. It's the one place, the most important place not to have them. And we're going to do everything we can at the state level. I think we have, and we've really opened the eyes of the other legislators that didn't really understand this issue. And James and myself and Drew Springer also will continue to bring this to light. We worked with a Democratic colleague of mine, Jose Menendez, as well. He represents San Antonio, so there's a lot of Air Force bases down there, and he understands it acutely, as does Senator Donna Campbell. So we're on fire on this issue, and we're going to be fierce advocates for really, honestly, common sense. I mean, you can't have, particularly with China on the rise, we need to really just continue to sharpen the blade. And the only way you're going to do that is to continue to be able to project air power and air supremacy. And the only way to do that is with proper training.
It's a tough issue, especially when you're dealing with community leaders and elected officials from communities that don't have a base, because you've got this inherent conflict of wanting to support business and have as little regulation as possible while still supporting and protecting the military. So it's a tough issue, and we appreciate your leadership on that. What's the craziest or funniest or most memorable thing that you've seen on the Senate floor?
The Senate is a lot different than the House. So to the folks watching, it's a lot like the House is a knife fight and the Senate's a tea party. It really is. And when we were in the House, so we have privileges in each chamber. So House members can go on the Senate floor and the Senate members can go on the House floor. And it should be that way because, we're only, once you pass a piece of legislation out of your chamber, you're only 1/3 of the way there.
Sure.
You have to get it to the other chamber, and then the governor's got to sign it. So that's a good thing. But when we would go onto the Senate floor, we never really felt quite welcome. There are 150 state reps and 31 state senators. And it was almost as if you were in the House of Lords, like you were looking for their white powdered wigs. And you thought as soon as you left, they would go back to speaking in British accents. Like, oh, was there a lowly House member? Have they been checked for lice? Like that kind of thing. And then, so I'll give you an example. Particularly when it's partisan. So if, let's say, yes, I think it was my son. Let's say that there's let's say I'm presenting a bill. I'm laying a bill out on the House floor. And I'm on the front mic. The back mic, any member can go to ask you questions. Sometimes they're friendly questions. Sometimes they're aggressive questions. And the goal of somebody that doesn't like your legislation, particularly from their other party in the House, is to embarrass you, to make you look bad, to make you look silly, to make you look stupid, to make the legislation then look bad, silly, and stupid. So then everybody will vote no. That's the knife fight. And then you got your screwdriver, they've got their shiv, and you barb back and forth. And I was used to that for 6 years. That's the way we did things. And then I was about to lay out a bill in the Senate, and a wonderful colleague of mine, a Democrat from the Valley, Senator Judith Zaffirini, came up to me. I was going to lay out the bill the next day. And she said, "Hello, Senator." That's another thing. The senators tend to call each other senators, where the House reps never call each other House reps. We just call them, on a first name basis. She goes, and she speaks very perfect English, very perfect diction. She says, "Hello, Senator. I just have a little love note for you. I just wanted to give this to you. I will be opposing your bill tomorrow." Then she calls them love notes when she tells you in advance, by the way, Henry, she tells you in advance she's going to vote against your legislation. And here are the 4 questions that I'm going to ask you tomorrow on the Senate floor in public. She gave me the questions beforehand. Well, because I wouldn't want you to be embarrassed. I just want you to be prepared. These are the questions that I must ask, and I feel compelled to. So thank you very much, and I apologize that I can't support your legislation. And I thought to myself, man, the Senate's awesome. Wow, this is the Tea Party. I was not, and I had almost made a mistake in a Senate committee hearing the week before by launching into what I thought was a bad piece of legislation written by a Democrat. And because I had just been house trained, and that's the way we did it. Unfortunately, I didn't have to, because it was clear to me the bill wasn't going to be considered. So I held back, and I'm glad I did. So those are the biggest differences as far as the chambers go.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, because watching the news, all you see is ambush and people trying to tear each other down. So,
Henry, can I piggyback on that, because it's very important for viewers to know something that unfortunately you never read in the media, because they have agendas. The Texas legislature acts very differently than DC, and we're all proud about it. Now, as a conservative Republican, and we are in the majority, I feel clearly that Texans want us to be the senior partner. That's the will of the people, at least at this point. So we are the senior partner. However, we get our priorities, and we do have our partisan fights. There's no doubt about that. We have our spats. But in the Texas Senate, under Dan Patrick, 99.5% of all the legislation that we passed last session had at least some bipartisan support. 99.5%. I mean, it's a startling and amazing number, but you never read that in the press, because they don't want to say, the Texas Senate, the Texas House, they really are different. They really do, because there's a lot of things that aren't partisan. Some, in fact, in Texas are regional, where you have same party, different regions. You have what we used to call in the House, because in the House, the way you vote is everybody presses a button and it lights up on the board, because there's 150 members. So it goes red and green for yes, red for no. In the Senate, we already give our votes to the secretary before really the debate takes place. Now you can go up and change your vote, but she already knows. So it's just different in that regard. But you have some weird boards sometimes.
Who's your mentor?
I'd say my parents would be my best mentors. I wish I had more, quite frankly, and I try to be a mentor and find proteges out there, because it is important. It's so helpful. In fact, there's a candidate running for state house in Central Texas, and I'm not that much older than she is, but she was kind of new to politics, and I've really tried to act as a mentor. Her name is Shelby Slauson, and she's probably going to win her runoff. And because I just remembered how hard it was for me when you first run, and all of the trial, that in business, when you got to Wichita Falls and we're running the champion, the trial and error type stuff. And if somebody can guide you, how much easier it is and how much faster you can get down that path. So definitely my parents, clearly Lou Holtz. I think Colonel Rob Franklin, his beautiful wife, still lives up, and unfortunately his widow now, lives in Burke Burnett. Colonel Franklin was a great mentor. Colonel Miller, Colonel Hansen, Lieutenant Colonel Jim Beach from Shepherd Air Force Base, Noel Liner, who I worked with. He was a civilian. He was a great mentor. He still lives in Wichita Falls. And it's great when your mentor can vote for you too. So Noel was able to do that. I appreciate it.
And convince others to vote for you.
You're right. Rita Gustafson has been amazing. Mentor for me, and really helping me get around to Wichita County and Clay County and Archer County. I appreciate that. Jackie Hager's been wonderful as well. So I think no matter what your age and what stage or chapter of your life you're in, you can always have mentors and you can always find proteges. Lou Holtz absolutely was a wonderful and tremendous mentor. Very deeply grateful for all the things that he did for me as well. So I've been blessed.
Yeah, Reno Gustafson's one of those guys. When I first moved to Wichita Falls, because I didn't know anybody except the people I had interviewed with, and so early on, I think it was the first week I was here, the mayor at the time here was Glenn Barham, and I asked Glenn, I said, who do I need to know? And he gave me one name, and that was Reno Gustafson. And then Reno just kind of got me out from there.
Oh, that's fine. Well, Jim and Vicky McCoy have been wonderful as well. I think they've helped out James quite a bit, and they've helped me out. And there's just been so many other people that have and look at what Harry Patterson does for the community.
Yeah.
He's been tremendous. And that's the special thing about Wichita Falls is you have folks that have, some have had wild success financially, and they love their community, and they're there for Wichita Falls, and it is unique. As you said, I remember you with the presentation that we had a couple of years ago with Wichita Falls being over 100,000 and not having quite the population growth as all the other towns in Texas.
Right.
And it's because we have size in Wichita County, but you have distance. You're not that close to, the Metroplex, but you're almost there, and so and that's incumbent upon us. That I'd love to have, I know I'm dreaming here, but some kind of the fast train where we could, get in and get in and out. And I'll tell you another thing. One of my goals is in redistricting to bring Wichita County into a brand new congressional district. I do think most folks would agree that Wichita County has more in common with their counties to the east. Clay and Archer and Wichita are so intertwined, and even Montague and Cook and maybe some of the suburbs in the Metroplex Denton County. And God bless Amarillo, and I love them, but it's quite far.
Yeah,
and,
it is.
The Panhandle always decides who the congressional member is just because of numbers and population. And it would be my goal to put Wichita County in a brand new congressional district where they could decide. In theory, somebody would have a really good fighting chance to come out of Wichita County and be the member of Congress. So that's what I've been working on. I did just get appointed to the Senate redistricting committee, so I'm very excited about that. And so I'll have.
Senator, you froze up there for a second on my screen, so I'm going to give you a second to get back. You are watching The Pulse, brought to you by United Regional Healthcare System. I'm Henry Florsham, President and CEO for the Wichita Falls Chamber of Commerce, and our guest today is Senator Pat Fallon. And Senator must have not liked the question I asked because it looks like he's dropped out. We're gonna wait for him to get back. And so, while we're waiting for the senator, I just want to mention that let me restart. After 60 years of being located in the Hamilton building, Chamber of Commerce has been downtown, I think, since its inception. And so when I got here, we'd been in the second floor of the Hamilton building, hidden, and nobody could find us. I talked to so many people born and raised in Wichita Falls that had no idea where the Chamber of Commerce was. And so when I came for my first interview back in June of 2013, I told the board at that point, I said, listen, if you hire me, we're going to pursue a new location because we've got to be more visible and accessible. We've got to, the local community, the business community has to be able to find us, and visitors to Wichita Falls certainly have to be able to find us. And so back then, when I started in the job in October of 13, that was a conversation point, but it takes a while. And so we looked all over town. We looked at different facilities in the retail sector and in downtown and others, and just never found quite the right fit. And then last fall, Cody Magana with Wright Realty, who owns the Hamilton building, came to me and said, hey, I've got an idea. Come down and show me. And so on the first floor of the Hamilton building, Pat, hey, I'm going to wrap up the story real quick, and then we'll get back to you.
Okay, sure.
So basically, Cody came to me and showed me 3 different office spaces on the first floor of the Hamilton building where we could knock down some walls and take all 3. And long story short, over the pandemic and now, we have moved into a first floor location at the corner of Lamar and 8th Street. Great street front presence, spectacular mural, local artists painted in our lobby, big boardroom. And so we're starting to get signage up on the outside. Pat, we've been hidden upstairs in the Hamilton building. You've been up there for 60 years. Nobody knew where we were. Next time you come back, you'll see our new location, street front location. You can see us when you're driving by.
I like the background there. It looks good.
Yeah, you can see the sidewalk right there. And so we're so much more connected to the community. And I was telling our audience about that. So you guys come see us. We're at the corner of Lamar and 8th Street. We got double doors right at the corner there, and so you can walk in right off the sidewalk, and it's just awesome. And so the way we can represent Wichita Falls to visitors from the outside now is completely different from what we could do before. Pat, let me ask you a question about politics. If you could go back before you first ran for statewide office, if there was one thing that you wish you knew then that you didn't, what would that be? And we're having some network connections again. So hopefully Senator Fallon can get back with us here in a minute. We're going to talk to him about entrepreneurship and advice he would give young entrepreneurs. And so while we're waiting for him to get back, I just want to finish that thought. Our job is to represent Wichita Falls and help grow a better community. And a big part of that is being available for you guys to come access the support that we can provide, to use the resources and services of the chamber, for you to be able to visit with our team and talk about an economic development idea, something you need for your business, using our meeting room, or just coming to get maps and stuff for visitors. And then for people from out of town, they still want to come to the local Chamber of Commerce to ask questions about what's going on, to take a look at some maps, to have a nice place to sit and hang out while they're recouping from their trip. And before, we couldn't do that. Well, now we can. And so please come by the Hamilton building at the corner of Lamar and 8th. You can walk in right off the sidewalk. We've got 10 employees here whose job it is to build a better Wichita Falls, and then hundreds of volunteers. And so come by and meet the team and see the people that are working to build a better community. That is our job. And so we spend all day, every day working with people like Senator Pat Fallon as we're trying to do that, because it takes a much larger team than just the 10 staff. And frankly, the chamber is not just us here, but it's the entire community. It's our members, it's our elected officials, it's business owners and leaders and nonprofit leadership, and then folks at the district and the state level, and even in DC. And so we engage with Senator Cruz quite a bit. Our job, like I said, is to build a better community. And so as we do that, we can only do it to the best of our ability if we have your support and if you know what we're up to. Because I was talking to somebody earlier about prospects for business recruitment. The best salespeople for Wichita Falls, it's not us. We're the hired guns. It's you guys out there. It's business owners and managers that know other business owners and managers that are elsewhere, that they can talk to them about what it's like to do business in Wichita Falls. And so if we just sat here just with our 10 employees and tried to do this on our own, it wouldn't happen. And so we need your support. And that goes whether you're a chamber member or not. Our job as economic developers is to help you grow, is to help keep you here, and to help build a better Wichita Falls, regardless of whether you pay dues to us or not. That said, we need your support at the same time. And it's really interesting because economic development has changed so much over the years. Back when I was growing up and when a lot of you guys were younger, economic development was like this. You would go out and recruit a business to move to your area. And then you'd use tax credits or a free building or cash or land or whatever. And a company would move to your city. It could be out in the middle of nowhere. And then all of a sudden people would follow. People would move because you were there, because you had jobs there. Nowadays, it's just different. And this has changed gradually over the past 20 or 25 years. Now we all know people, whether they're our age or they're our kids or their grandkids, people who have picked a city first and said, I'm going to move to that city. Well, what are you going to do? Well, I'm going to go find a job there, whether it's Austin or Dallas or Oklahoma City or whatever, Boston, whatever. We all know people who have done that. And so that changes the economic development game, because that changes what companies are looking for. That company can no longer just move to a city and assume that it's going to be able to operate effectively there. Nowadays, the companies are as interested in your workforce as they are in anything else. And so, frankly, in economic development today, there's only two things that matter, really. And that's the quality of your talent, your workforce, and then the quality of your place. And so we talk a lot about quality of life and what that means. And it means different things to different people. And to some people, it means what is there to do. And some people, it means what are the schools like. And some people, it's the availability of a diverse set of housing options, or what are my healthcare options? What's the traffic like? How much does it cost to live there? And it's so many different things. It's not just one thing anymore. And so the communities that provide that quality of life are the ones that are going to win in economic development. Those are the ones that are going to be successful. And so that's why you see so many communities focusing on things like modern school facilities or downtown preservation and revitalization or recreation opportunities like trails and parks and baseball facilities and skate parks and all sorts of things. And Wichita Falls has a lot of that going on right now. And the question is if you were talking to a friend of yours that lives elsewhere, what are the things they would ask you about if you said, hey, you should move to Wichita Falls? And frankly, as much as jobs are more than jobs, it's going to come down to what is the lifestyle of the people that live there? And we ask ourselves that every day. And so if you look at the strategy that we are pursuing to grow Wichita Falls, quite a bit of it is focused on traditional aspects of economic development. How do we recruit business? What are the tools we need? Do we have the right business park, sites, incentives? But then also, how do we market? Where do we go? Who are our targets? And how do we go after them? And so that's certainly part of our plan. How do we address our existing business issues? How do we identify expansion opportunities with existing business? How do we identify threats to sectors or to specific businesses? And then how do we help head off those threats? Those are certainly parts of our strategy. But unlike past years, now the strategy also focuses on how do we develop the workforce that you need to operate your business, and not just today, but what does that look like 5 years from now? 10 years from now, we have to tell a prospect today, where are you going to be pulling your workforce from 10 years from now? How are we going to create that? And then on top of those more traditional aspects of economic development, our strategy focuses on quality of life issues like modern school facilities. It is very difficult to say we're going to recruit somebody here that's got kids in junior high or high school and then take them by schools that are in the physical shape our schools are in and say, yeah, we want you to come here, when the other towns they're looking at might have brand new schools. It is an unfair competition. And so we've got to do something to address it. Same goes for downtown. There's not a great city in this country right now that doesn't have a good walkable historic district where you can go do lots of things and live there as well. It's just what people want. Bike-friendly communities are another one of those. And we're working on that to become more bike-friendly for both the recreational cyclist who likes to get out on the weekends with their kids, but also for people that want to commute. And we've got quite a few people right now that actually commute to work or to school on their bicycles. We just don't make it very easy for them. And so the big thing to understand is that economic development has changed. And as we continue to try to build a better Wichita Falls, we're going to continue to pursue very targeted business recruitment efforts, but we're also going to push forward very aggressively on how do we make a better city? Because I'll say it again, the only two things that matter anymore in economic development are the quality of your talent and the quality of your place. And so as you think about economic development, if there's something that this community's been pursuing that you didn't really like, whether it's schools or Lake Wichita or downtown or anything, I urge you to think about it in terms of the bigger picture. And what does an outsider see when they come into Wichita Falls? That's why those initiatives are important, not because we've got a pet project or we think downtown is fun or Lake Wichita is cool. It's because what it means to the bigger picture, what it means to keep people in Wichita Falls, and what it means to have somebody come in from the outside, and what it means for visitors, and do they want to stop here? And so there's a lot going on in this community, and we don't apologize for it. I've been talking about downtown revitalization since I first came here, not because I just want a better downtown, but because I know what it means for our economic development efforts, and I know what it means when we're trying to attract somebody here from elsewhere. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story, and hopefully the senator can come back before we have to wrap this up. That I was born and raised in North Louisiana, a town called Monroe, and you may have heard of it before. There was an Air Force base there a long time ago. Chenault Airfield is the field there. The base is no longer there, but it's the home to Delta Airlines. They were founded there originally as a crop duster service, who then realized they could start making money by bringing people from one place to another. And so I grew up there, went to a small high school, and graduated high school in the late 80s and decided I was going to LSU. And I got to LSU. My dad had gone there, And I graduated high school with maybe 45 people. It was the biggest class our high school had ever had. And then go off to LSU, and freshman biology has 800 people in it. And I joined a fraternity and had a ton of fun and just got lost. And so second semester, I called my mom and I said, hey, listen, this is just not working. And so I went home and started working odd jobs and just slowly got back into school. The school there was called Northeast Louisiana University. Now it's the University of Louisiana at Monroe. And so I did what doctors do. I took 7 years to graduate, but just for my bachelor's. And so then after college, wasn't really interested in hanging around Monroe. There wasn't a whole lot going on. And I found my way to Lafayette. I have a twin brother. A lot of people don't believe that, but I got a twin brother. And while we were in Monroe, he met a girl that was going to school up there who was from New Iberia. And that is Cajun, thick-hearted Cajun country, just south of Lafayette. And so they got married, and he moved down there with her. And so I headed down there. And first day I was in Lafayette, I went to a staffing agency just trying to find a job, just a sales job or management trainee job or something. And it turns out they had a sales position for their agency. And so selling temporary services and that sort of thing in the business community. And so I went to work for them from day one. And they were in the same office building as the Lafayette Economic Development Authority. Like most of you, I didn't grow up knowing what economic development was. I had no idea. And so over the next 3.5 years or so, I got to know them. Saw them every day, helped them out with some volunteer work. And at one point, a job came open in workforce development that was quite a bit related to what I was doing for the staffing agency. And so long story short, back around 2000, I guess, I went to work in economic development, and I've been doing it ever since. And so for the next 10 years, I worked in Lafayette in various roles there in economic development. And my wife and I met Kimberly there. She's from Dallas and had moved to Lafayette for a job. And we finally realized that if I was ever going to be the number one guy at a chamber or an economic development organization, a traditional EDO, it was going to be time to look elsewhere, because my boss there, my mentor, is still there in that position. And so we found a little town just north of my hometown in South Arkansas called El Dorado. I went and ran the chamber there for 3 years, and we did economic development for the city, very similar to the setup in Wichita Falls, just on a much smaller scale. And so about 2 years in, a guy named Glenn Shepard, we had him come to speak to our chamber. He's an HR consultant type, and he's real connected around the country with chambers. And he said, there's this job opening in Wichita Falls, Texas, and I think you'd be a good fit for it. Now, I had barely ever heard of Wichita Falls. Kimberly grew up in Dallas, didn't know anything about Wichita Falls. And so at first we weren't interested. And about every 2 weeks, Glenn would text me or call and say, hey, this job's open. I know the executive search firm. You should really talk to them. And after a couple of months, I think Kimberly first said, well, let's talk to them and see. And long story short, Glenn connected me with the head of the search firm. I threw my hat in the ring. They got me introduced to the search committee. I met Chuck White and then all the rest of the people involved in the search. And in October of 2013, I moved to Wichita Falls. And then in November, after the Thanksgiving, I guess right when the Thanksgiving school break started, Kimberly drove here. It ended up being during a snowstorm. She drove for about 12 hours with 5 kids and 3 dogs in the car, and got to Wichita Falls like Friday night before Thanksgiving at about 9 or 10 a.m. And it was a pretty rough experience for them, but we've been here ever since, and we love it. And so we could tell that the leadership here was ready for something different. They just didn't know what. And my personality, I'm a change agent. I like blowing stuff up and making it better. And so been here almost 7 years. We've made tons of changes at the Chamber of Commerce and in our economic development work as well. We're going to keep doing it. We love this city, and we see positive things. And so hopefully we can help everybody come out of this COVID-19 crisis and become better and stronger than we were before. So we're going to wrap this up here in just a minute. I just want to say thank you to everyone who watches The Pulse, who has supported our efforts, not only during this crisis, but since I've been in Wichita Falls. We have met met you guys and found tons of positive feedback and support. And so if you like what we're up to, please support the chamber. If you're a member, please consider increasing your investment. If you're not a member, come on. We want you to join the chamber family. We've got a lot of cool stuff going on. You can be part of something much bigger than yourself, and there's some very tangible benefits, and we can help your business with whatever your issues are as well. And so we'll be back here next week on Facebook and on Fox 18. That's it for today's edition of The Pulse. Thanks to Senator Fallon, to our sponsor, United Regional Healthcare System. Sorry, the senator had to skip out early. Maybe our attorney general grabbed him and said, you gotta come talk to me now. I don't know. But we'll stay in touch with him and bring him back as well, because he's a great guest, and can't wait to have him back in person in Wichita Falls as well. Remember, this show can be found on the Chamber's Facebook page at TexhomasHomepage.com, and every Sunday on KJTL Texhomas Fox 18. Join me next Wednesday when my guest will be State Rep James Frank. I'll see you then.